Thanks for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Kim Dami in Seoul. President Ishiba embarked on a 6-day two-nation trip to Japan and the U.S. this morning. His first stop was Tokyo, where he met with Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba for talks on key cooperation. Without further ado, let's go over to Tokyo, where our correspondent Yoon Jung-min is standing by, traveling with the president. Jung-min, what's the latest from there?
Tami, I'm currently in Tokyo, where the leaders are meeting as we speak. Just a few hours ago, President Lee and Prime Minister Ishiba held their summit, which began in an amicable mood, with the two men shaking hands and exchanging greetings. First, take a look at what they had to say.
한국과 일본은 앞마당을 같이 쓰는 이웃과 같은 관계다 라고 했습니다. 어려운 것들은 충분한 시간을 두고 숙고를 하면서 협력할 수 있는 분야에 대해서 협력해 가는 것이 양국 국민들의 연합한 삶을 위한 우리 일본, 한국의 정치권의 할 일이라고 생각됩니다.
I believe developing and strengthening the Japan-South Korea relationship benefits not only the two countries, but also the region as a whole. I think it's very important to strengthen cooperation between Japan, Korea, and the U.S.
It's their first in-person meeting in more than 2 months. They last met in Canada. With the international order changing fast since then, President Lee noted the importance of bolstering bilateral cooperation, saying the two countries share similar values, order, system, and ideology.
I see. Jung-min, I also hear the two leaders announced a joint statement at a press conference that has just wrapped up for the first time in 17 years. Tell us more.
You're absolutely right, Tami. So there's a lot to digest, ranging from the so-called shuttle diplomacy, economic cooperation, and regional issues. But first, take a look at some of the key deliverables.
양국이 직면한 공통 과제에 공동 대응할 필요성에 공감하고 정책 경험을 공유하며 해결 방안을 함께 모색하기 위해 당국 간 협의체를 출범시키기로 하였습니다.
For the economy and security, we have agreed to bolster strategic communication between the two countries under the current environment.
Two leaders agreed to bolster cooperation in hydrogen and AI, tackling together low birth rates and expanding working holidays among their people. Their focus was also on strengthening the three-way cooperation with the U.S. and working together on the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. They are set to work together on the upcoming events, including the APEC leaders meeting in Korea and the Korea-Japan-China summit in Japan. He chose Japan as his first stop for a standalone visit since taking office, preceding his U.S. trip, which is very unusual for any South Korean president. It's widely seen as the new liberal leader showing his determination to continue the three-way cooperation with the U.S., regardless of a change in government. Back to you, Dami.
All right, Jung-min, thank you for that coverage. That was our Yoon Jung-min live from Tokyo. And earlier today, President Lee started his official schedule by meeting some 200 Korean residents in Japan. He promised support for the Korean community that has suffered from in the past. Our Park Gun-woo has more.
Lee's message to Korean residents in Japan started with him expressing deep respect and gratitude, as he called them steadfast supporters and pillars of the homeland, despite hardships from colonial rule and national division.
굴곡진 대한민국 역사에서 구비구비마다 우리 동포들의 헌신과 희생이 있었습니다. 우리 정부는 언제나 빛나는 애국심을 발휘해 주신 동포 여러분들의 애국심을 잊지 않고 꼭 기억하고 보답하도록 하겠습니다.
He said visiting Tokyo was deeply moving as he saw traces of the intense struggles Koreans endured and stressed the need to confront painful parts of history.
정말로 많은 제1 동포들이 억울하게 간첩 조작 사건의 피해자로 고통을 겪었습니다. 국가폭력에 희생당한 피해자와 또 가족 여러분께 진심으로 위로의 말씀을 드리면서 공식적으로 다시 한번 사과드립니다. 다시는 반인권적인 국가폭력이 벌어지지 않는 나라다운 나라, 국민의 안전한 일상을 책임지는 부강한 나라를 만들기 위해서 최선을 다하겠다는 약속을 드립니다.
While appreciating the government's support, representatives from the Korean community also replied by stressing the need to develop Korea-Japan relations.
From wartime volunteers to those who helped modernize Korea, up to the fourth and fifth generations, all are living proudly here. As the Korean community has diversified, Korea-Japan cooperation and friendship are strongly needed to move towards a brighter future together.
President Lee pledged continued assistance for the community and future generations, calling them key contributors in developing Korea-Japan relations. And according to the presidential office, one way was through creating a better voting environment.
Lee asked the citizens of the Republic of Korea living in Japan to exercise their voting rights, as the government will make it easier for them to fulfill their role and uphold the meaning of their citizenship.
She added that the president also listened carefully to the human rights issues remaining in Japanese society. Kang said the government will strive to build a Korea centered on people and dignity, while reaffirming support for the community in Japan. 박건우, Arirang News.
And the South Korean leader's visit to Tokyo is drawing keen attention from the Japanese media. On Saturday, various outlets reported that this is the first time a Korean president has visited Japan before the U.S. and the history of Seoul-Tokyo diplomatic relations that were normalized in 1965. They also noted that the visit is the first to be made in August, the month of Korea's liberation from Japan's colonization. The Nihongeizai Shimbun stressed Lee's pragmatic diplomacy, commenting that the South Korean president values substance over ideology. So, President Lee has made Japan his first overseas stop before heading to Washington. The visit marks the resumption of the so-called shuttle diplomacy with Tokyo, as well as his initiative to strengthen three-way cooperation with the U.S. Our Oh Soo-young has more.
President Lee Jae-myung has underscored his push to stabilize bilateral ties with Japan and bolster trilateral cooperation with the United States. As the president visits Tokyo before Washington, D.C., a diplomatic analyst told Arirang News that the move is unprecedented for a South Korean leader, sending a message to both Japan and the U.S.
In the past, Korea-Japan relations were largely seen as a bilateral issue, but it has become increasingly apparent that good relations are necessary for solid Korea-U.S. ties. So, demonstrating that Korea-Japan shuttle diplomacy is functioning well can be a useful card for Korea with regard to the U.S.
Lee's Japan trip not only marks a strong break from the tradition of new Korean leaders heading to the White House first, it also stands out as past progressive presidents prioritized Beijing over Tokyo as the second capital of outreach. Tokyo officials had feared that the new Korean leader might adopt an anti-Japan stance, revisiting historical sticking points. However, Lee's remarks since his inauguration, pledging continuity in improving bilateral ties, have now been put into action, with the resumption of top-level shuttle diplomacy, reciprocal visits between Seoul and Tokyo.
His recent interview with the Yomiuri Shimbun elaborates on his approach. If you look closely, he said he will accept past intergovernmental accords, such as on the issue of comfort women and wartime forced labor reached during conservative administrations. That is something that reassures the Japanese government.
And according to Dr. Kim Suk-hyun, the newspaper devoted 9 full pages to the interview, a rare gesture that shows how seriously Japan views the South Korean outreach. He further expressed hope for a new breakthrough declaration with Japan, inspired by the 1998 Kim Dae-jung Obuchi Declaration, when Japan expressed remorse for its brutal colonial rule, while Korea pledged a new era of bilateral ties.
Aside from discussing security cooperation within the trilateral framework with the U.S. and the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, economic cooperation will likely be the main priority, supported by cultural and people-to-people exchange, while historical disputes are handled separately.
Seoul is set to name a new ambassador to Japan, Lee Hyuk, a veteran diplomat who served 3 terms in Tokyo. providing further impetus towards building a future-oriented relationship.
Rather than sending a political figure with limited knowledge of Japan, appointing a seasoned diplomat shows President Lee's practical approach to shaping bilateral relations.
Kim says the Tokyo visit now sets the stage for critical talks in Washington, likely to touch upon trilateral cooperation, along with trade, defense cooperation, and handling North Korea. Oh Seong, Arirang News.
And the next stop for President Lee is Washington, D.C. With this, top-level officials are already there for something of a full-court press, sorting out the agenda items for the summit just 2 days away. Our Kim Do-yeon has the details.
With the much-anticipated summit between President Lee Jae-myung and U.S. President Donald Trump now just days away, South Korea's top diplomatic and trade officials have assembled in Washington, D.C. for a final, intense push to shape the agenda topics and secure Seoul's interests. On Friday local time, Foreign Minister Cho Hyun met with his U.S. counterpart, Secretary of State Marco Rubio. According to Seoul's foreign ministry, both sides stressed the summit's historic nature, with Secretary Rubio vowing to work towards a constructive and productive outcome. A competing sense of pressure, however, was evident in a release from the U.S. State Department. It revealed differing priorities by highlighting Washington's push for increased collective burden sharing and trade fairness. These priorities translate into complex talks over key issues. The U.S. wants greater strategic flexibility for its troops in Korea, a delicate matter for Seoul's relations with China. Meanwhile, Seoul is also reportedly seeking to revise the bilateral nuclear energy agreement to allow for fuel reprocessing, a move Washington has long resisted over non-proliferation concerns. The critical nature of these talks is underscored by the sheer speed of Minister Cho's visit. His abrupt departure on Thursday, which meant skipping President Lee's visit to Japan, is a clear sign that unresolved issues required his immediate high-level attention in Washington. Industry Minister Kim Jong-kwan, who's also currently in Washington, is set to meet with industry and trade officials from the U.S. He was cautious with this visit as well as he left Korea.
I don't think it's appropriate to comment on the specific details right now. For now, I will do my best to ensure the summit is successful.
Despite the careful diplomatic language, it's clear tough negotiations are underway. The U.S. call for fairness is widely seen as potential prelude to new demands possibly targeting South Korea's highly sensitive agricultural market. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
North Korea has warned the South to halt its provocative measures. The North State News Agency said on Saturday that earlier this week, South Korea fired warning shots at North Korean troops conducting barriers to permanently block off the border between the two Koreas. However, Seoul's Joint Chief of Staff said that this was after North Korean soldiers crossed the military demarcation line, and added that the North's soldiers withdrew after the warning shots. Now, at the National Assembly, the main opposition is holding a filibuster, as the ruling party has introduced a bill that is seen as contentious. This time, the pro-labor yellow envelope bill. Our political correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
A cycle of the ruling party introducing contentious bills and the opposition launching filibusters to block their passage is continuing into the weekend. Among the contentious bills, the so-called Yellow Envelope Bill was brought forward during Saturday's plenary session, prompting the main opposition People Power Party to launch a filibuster. The bill is an amendment to labor union laws that limits employer action against striking union members, including retaliatory measures. Businesses worry the bill could infringe on management rights, while the PPP is concerned that it could drive companies overseas, urging discussions on revisions. However, the government and the ruling Democratic Party argue it'll foster cooperation between labor and management and boost productivity, showing strong determination to push it through.
The amendment aims to prevent workers' strikes from being discouraged by large damages claims.
Some companies have to seek subcontracting partners overseas, or even shut down shops and factories when they lose domestic partners.
Under the National Assembly Act, a filibuster on each bill can be halted after 24 hours if at least 3/5 of the parliament agrees to do so. The bill is expected to be put to a vote immediately after the filibuster ends on Sunday morning. Next in line is a revision to the Commercial Act that aims to strengthen corporate governance transparency and protect the rights of minority shareholders, particularly within large corporations. The DP plans to introduce the bill on Sunday and put it to a vote on Monday, while the PPP is preparing for their filibusters. 신하영, Arirang News.
Fed Chair Jerome Powell has hinted at a possible rate cut amid a growing pressure for a reduction from the White House. Speaking in Jackson Hole on Friday, he said recent conditions, including slowing job growth, may lead to the Fed adjusting the benchmark rate now in the 4.25 range to 4.5%. He added that risks to inflation and a cooling labor market remain challenges and said policymakers will continue to monitor the situation. A potential move as early as the September Fed meeting would be the first cut since last December. Now, Powell's remarks lifted stock markets sharply afterwards, including the Dow Jones Industrial Average up by nearly 2%. That is all we have for tonight. Thanks for watching. Good night.